Hello, this is Dr. Acebedo again. Hi to everyone that are watching this Facebook Live. Today, I'm going to talk about deuterium depleted water. It sounds like at first when you hear the word deuterium, it sounds like it's a atomic bomb or something. It's a scary sounding name. But what we have learned, and it was discovered in 1930, and that led to the Nobel Prize, that hydrogen has many isotopes. So there are actually three isotopes, naturally occurring hydrogen. So one is hydrogen 1, which is protium, and hydrogen normally has a proton in the nucleus and electron on the outside. Now, the second hydrogen is what we call deuterium, the second isotope of hydrogen. And it has a proton, but at the same time, it has a neutron and the electron on the outside ring. So, deuterium and the protium, or the regular hydrogen, they taste the same. For example, if you drink water, they both taste the same, but they behave differently at the molecular level. So, and the third one is the unstable hydrogen, which is used in the hydrogen bomb. And there are other synthetic hydrogens, H4, H5, H6, H7. Those are synthetic hydrogens. So, what is deuterium? Now, as I've explained, this is what we call the heavy hydrogen because it has an extra neutron in the nucleus. So it's heavier than the regular hydrogen, which has no neutron in the nucleus. The fact that they behave differently, the deuterium was found to have a higher boiling point and a lower freezing point. When you go to an area where there's snow, that ice is the deuterium, and when you see a water below it, that's the light hydrogen. Okay. Now, the scientists have been doing a lot of research on this since the discovery of deuterium since 1930, and they found out that the deuterium affects each individual cell. So, I want you to think of a cell, and inside the cell there's what we call mitochondria. And from a previous talk, I've talked about how cancer cell, or how the mitochondria affects the cancer cell, and we know that it's damage to the mitochondria. And 90%, 95% of the time, it is environmentally triggered. Now we go into what functional medicine is, meaning trying to find the root cause of the problem. So inside the mitochondria, and we all know, I assume all of you guys know that the mitochondria, the main function is to produce ATP, which is the energy, okay? And then there's another one, byproduct, which is water. So ATP and water is a byproduct of the oxidative phosphorylation, okay? Now, inside the mitochondria, there is a thing that we call nanomotor. It's like an engine, car engine, that spins really fast, and it spins at 9,000 times per minute. And what drives that? So imagine there is I'll just do this analogy. I think it's easier. So there are buildings. When you enter a building, there's a revolving door, okay? Just imagine that's the nanomotor in the mitochondria. And it's driven by hydrogen. So hydrogen is the smallest molecule, okay? It can penetrate anywhere in our body, in the cells, in the mitochondria, even penetrates the blood-brain barrier. So what drives this nanomotor is the hydrogen, okay? Now, Dr. Boros, who's doing some research on deuterium at UCLA, they came up with an article that 10 to 20,000 years ago, the deuterium content in our water was 10 parts per million lower than what we now have. And their theory is that it's probably because of the pollution, the toxic chemicals that we now have introduced the environment leads to accumulation of deuterium. Anyway, let me go back to the nanomotor. So the heavy hydrogen, the deuterium that we have in our water, cause the nanomotor to slow down and causes damage eventually. Now, as they tried to lower the deuterium content, they noticed that the nanomotor now spins faster as we go down to from 150, which is what we have in our water, they go down to less than 130 parts per million. And by the way, parts per million is because in 1 million atom, they found out there's a 150 of deuterium, okay, content. So that's why they call it 150 parts per million. So as they go down to the lower content of deuterium, less than 130 to 90 to 60 to 50 to 23 parts per million or 25 parts per million, they found out that it caused a lot of biologic effects in our cell. So all chronic disease that we now know, chronic fatigue, cancer, diabetes, nerve pain, are caused by, most of the chronic diseases are caused by damage to the mitochondria. And there's a lot of talk about mitochondria now, right? In functional integrative doctors are talking about mitochondria, how we're going to protect the mitochondria. There are mitochondrial supplements, CoQ10, PQQ, and all of these supplements that to support the mitochondria. But I think this is the root level of what we should know of the mitochondria damage that is caused by deuterium. So, having said that, they found out in the research that, especially for cancer cells, as they lower the deuterium, cancer cells cannot adapt easily to lower deuterium. So either they die or they go into apoptosis and they inhibit the growth. And it's done in vitro studies and in vivo studies. They've done studies since 1993. I was looking at articles on this, and 1993, it was mainly done by Dr. Gabor Sumale from Hungary. They did human clinical trials in several hospitals in Hungary. And it showed, this is the most fascinating fact that they found in the research. So cancer patients on conventional therapy only extended their life to 2.5 years. But if they added deuterium depleted water, what happened? It increased their lifespan to 11.1 years. That's really, really amazing research. And now they've done 10,000 clinical trials, and it's now expanding to China. And we have a deuterium depleted center in UCLA, and it's run by Dr. Boris, who is also a Hungarian born scientist. So now that we know the basic facts about deuterium, how can we deplete our body naturally? So let's talk about some natural stuff on how we can deplete our body of deuterium. One, the ketogenic diet. So the higher fat content that you have, the fat content in our food, like butter or animal fats and fish oils, all the good fats, olive oils, it showed that they have the lower deuterium content as compared to Western diet, which is mainly processed foods, starches, sugars. They are high in deuterium. And hydrogen, it's all over. It's all over in our food. Hydrogen is always there. So one of the things that we can lower is ketogenic diet or paleo diet. Plant-based diet, which is pretty much green leafy vegetables, they found a lower deuterium content. And doing intermittent fasting is another way of lowering our deuterium load. Sleep is very important. Most of us are not getting enough sleep, and the research have shown that if you get enough sleep, around 7 to 8 hours per night, we lower deuterium, and sleep is another way of detoxifying ourselves. Okay, so and naturally drinking water that is depleted in deuterium, or we call it deuterium depleted water. Nuts is another one that are low in deuterium, macadamia nuts and all the nuts out there. So what are the foods that we should avoid eating? Okay, as I've mentioned, starchy food, potatoes, those are high in deuterium, which is the heavy hydrogen. Now, if I speak about deuterium, that means I'm talking about the heavy hydrogen, okay? And starch, sugars, all of these are heavy in hydrogen. Now, can you see the correlation here? Cancer patients, we tell them to cut their sugars. And we know that the cancer cell uses sugar as their main fuel, aside from glutamine, okay? So now we know how to avoid deuterium or decrease the deuterium load in our body. Now it's interesting that a NASA scientist, Kurt Gödel, have found out that deuterium causes errors in DNA. And we know that cancer, as we do the RGCC, there are a lot of genetic defects there on the RGCC test. So as they go down in the deuterium content, it prevents DNA replication errors, which is pretty interesting study. Now, where's deuterium? As we get closer to the equator, the water content has more deuterium, or the heavy hydrogen. That's one. Number two, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, they're higher in deuterium. It is estimated to be around 150 to 155 parts per million. Now, as you go into higher altitudes, the lower the deuterium content. So, if you go north or south pole, they have the lowest deuterium content of water. Now, it's interesting that if you go back to the history, you found people that are living in higher altitudes. In fact, the Russian scientists found out that those people who live in Siberia, it's higher elevation, they live longer. So it took them, I think, 50 years to find out why could it be their diet. But eventually they found out that their water content is low in deuterium. The same thing with the Hunzakuts. I think it's somewhere in Pakistan area, a higher elevation, where they live longer. And they found out that the deuterium content in the water is way lower than what we have here. So what we have now is a deuterium depleted water that's still not manufactured in the USA, but it is manufactured in Russia, Hungary, and what is the third country that's using it? Hungary. There's a third country that I forgot. Romania, by the way. So those are the three countries right now that are manufacturing deuterium depleted water. And again, they've done research in Europe, Hungary. Now it's expanding to China and UCLA here. So to me, this really helps a lot, especially for cancer patients, for chronic fatigue patients, for chronic nerve pain, which helps when we lower the deuterium content, that helps with their pain. And switching to ketogenic diet, plant-based diet will lower our deuterium content. Intermittent fasting, sauna is another way of lowering our deuterium content in our body. So there's so many ways that we can lower deuterium. We can help a lot of our patients suffering from chronic diseases, and mainly cancer. Okay, that's where most of the patients that I've seen in my clinic. So how can we help you guys? To me, this is functional medicine at its best. Zooming in on the root cause of the problem, looking at the mitochondria at the cellular level, and how we can optimize mitochondrial function by decreasing our deuterium content or deuterium body load. There's also a test for that, which is a saliva test, which we're gonna talk about in the future, which would help identify or measure your deuterium in your body. And then as we develop a deuterium depleted diet and the deuterium depleted water, we can follow that up by measuring your deuterium level. For healthy individuals, for example, athletes, or you just want to be healthy, you can lower the deuterium content around 110 or 120 parts per million. That's good enough to give you a boost of energy. And let me give you an example. I have one patient that has stage 4 lung cancer. And of course he was on some supplements, but I put him on deuterium depleted water. 2 weeks after starting deuterium depleted water, he told me, there's something in that water. My energy is back. He has been playing golf for 7 months. I think 4 Sundays ago now, he started playing golf. Which makes sense because now he has his mitochondria is functioning at its optimal level and producing more ADP, producing more water. The nanomotor is spinning at 9,000 times per minute, which is usually where it should be, where deuterium would slow that down to 3,000 times per minute, and eventually it causes damage and causes degeneration and decrease your energy. Another thing that I would like to mention is for those people with hormonal imbalances, based on research by Dr. Gabor and Dr. Boros, they found that by deuterium depletion, their hormones would start to correct. Now, again, this is fascinating research and evidence that that all functional doctors are starting to learn now about the deuterium depletion as part of the treatment for all chronic disease. As a precaution, don't do it yourself. That's why we have a protocol for deuterium depletion and how to lower your deuterium slowly. Because in the research, it showed that there's a lot of die-off, especially for cancer patients. If you go down really fast, well, first of all, you're gonna notice some decrease in your energy initially, and then there's a lot of die-off of cancer cells, which is not good. So I want you guys to talk to professionally trained deuterium, and you can see me, you can see Dr. Kilini and some of our doctors here, and we can give you the protocol. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in our comment section, and then I will gladly answer your questions and your comments. Thank you, and once again, this is Dr. Acebedo. Till next time.